startups are just a collection of failures.
Everyone fails. Failure is natural. I think the really important thing is that
Making a new reality for yourself and for the world and like your startup is a near impossible feat.
Empowered is a fantastic book, like especially if you're moving into product leadership and you're starting to think about
Build a great product team. I think you need to have three kind of fundamental pillars. Things that we do differently that make that really possible is the first of all is that we just build really small. We are back with another episode of the Do As I Say, Not As I Did podcast, where the name kind of explains the whole show. We're giving you advice based on everything we did wrong the first time. Well, at least everything I did wrong the first time. I'm not sure about Umberto. And then each week I bring on founders, investors, product experts, technology futurists, sales gurus, and just about anyone who is really smart and can help us work out how to build great businesses. And then together we answer the questions you send through about what's going on in your lives and in your businesses. And just to be clear, the guests have never heard these questions before. They're hearing them for the first time at the same time as you. So if you do have questions or you're trying to put out fires, send us an email and we're going to workshop it on the show. So send those emails through to podcast@joelditrapani.com. That name is a tough one, so I'm just going to put that one in the show notes so you can copy and paste it later. I'm your host, Joel Ditrapani, and I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of HowdyGo, which is an edtech scale-up. We've grown through Australia and the UK, and we're now focused on the US. On top of that, I'm an advisor and a coach in the product space where I help startups and businesses work out how to actually run great product teams, because that's how you actually build great products. Today, I'm excited to be joined by my friend Umberto Anderle, one of the co-founders at HowdyGo, a startup which allows SaaS companies to build interactive product demos and share them with their prospects. Before this, Umberto led the product team at Bibliu, a rapidly scaling edtech company based in the UK. But the incredible thing about Umberto is that he's completely self-taught in the product space. He started out at Bibliu as their first product hire and then just rose to the occasion every time and ended up building and leading the product function as they raised round after round after round. And in my own product journey, I've come back time and time again to get Umberto's help with my own challenges growing my own product team. So I'm actually excited to have him come on the show today and help with your questions. Umberto is an absolute expert at understanding what makes a product team great. So let's jump into it. Welcome, mate. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Awesome. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for that wonderful intro.
Well, look, before we jump into the questions, tell me a little bit more about what you're working on. What is HowdyGo exactly?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, HowdyGo is a SaaS company that allows other SaaS companies to build interactive product demos of their products. We essentially let you give your prospects a way to test drive your product, self-qualify, without having to go through multiple sales calls or a complex onboarding flow. So our interactive product demos are basically clones of your product that look and feel like the real thing, but guide your prospects through to your product's aha moment.
Do you have incredible product demos for your own platform?
The really tricky thing about our platform is that there's like this inception mode of an interactive demo. And so it can be quite confusing to like give interactive demos of an interactive demo platform. So we use interactive demos of other platforms as a way to showcase how it works.
That's actually a cool idea. Like, just living off or standing on the brands of giants, like this is Slack, guys. Like you already know how Slack works, or this is how Gmail works. And it makes it seem like you have awesome partners. So that is interesting. There is a really weird inception there.
Yeah. And then so basically we have these tooltips that guide someone through a flow. And when you have tooltips about editing tooltips, it becomes really, really confusing. So definitely the demoing other platforms has worked much better. And everyone knows we have a demo now, I think, on our landing page of Google Analytics, and our target segment knows Google Analytics really well. So it's a much easier way to show what we do.
Well, if you want to see the inception of product demos, head to HowdyGo and check that one out. I'll put the link in the description. But let's jump into the questions today. So this question is called Building a Product Team. We are an insurance tech startup, and I'm a co-founder and the CTO of the organization. We raised our Series A, and we're at the scaling stage. We have a pretty extensive SaaS platform for insurance companies. We do not have a head of product right now, and I handle the product side of things. While I wear the product hat, I have comparatively less experience leading a product team, and definitely the KPI side of things. I'm trying to learn myself and lead the team. I can help the team build, roll out quality product, but coming to engagement, tracking metrics, ensuring growth are areas where I lack, and I'm open towards learning it and learning how to lead a product team. I have 2 senior PMs and I'm unable to guide them in the right direction. I would appreciate feedback, suggestions here on any online courses or good books, or just how do I get good at this side of things? And this is from Tech and Me.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like, this is definitely something I've experienced, learning about product. I think, assuming the position they're in is that, as I said, they've got a product team already. There's 2 capable senior PMs in that team. What should you probably start with? My general recommendation is always start with a product strategy. Make sure that you explain clearly what the direction of the company and the product should be. That's kind of like a document that you should craft together with your co-founder or the CEO. Make sure that everyone's aligned on where the company should be heading. And then you can kind of build a product strategy out of that, so that your senior PMs actually have a bit of a guiding vision on where to go. That I think sets you up to start from a good base, where everyone's sort of speaking the same language and moving in the same direction.
Yeah. You need to start the strategy. I guess, first of all, you've obviously had some kind of success. You've raised a Series A. That is no easy feat. So that's huge. Congrats on that one. And you've obviously got some kind of product chops, because you've gotten to this point where you have 2 PMs building something. But you can feel lost in that stage, and you probably are getting to a stage where you need some strong product leadership there. That doesn't mean someone external. It can be you if you're willing to put the time in it and to learn it, but you're going to need to get some very strong product leadership skills there. I think I just love the book Build by Tony Fadell. Read that. That's a really good place to start. He kind of talks about product and startups in general, and it'll just give you some grounding framework. And then Umberto, there's a couple of books that you recommended to me that I think you said one of them made you cry.
Maybe.
Well, there was Empower and Inspire. Is that it?
Empowered is a fantastic book, like, especially if you're moving into product leadership and you're starting to think about that space. Like, that's probably one of the best books for like shaping how you think about stuff. The other, I think, on the strategy side, probably Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. That's another really, really great book on how to think about strategy in general, just not just the product side of it.
I thought it was Umberto that had said this to me, but I remember someone told me when they read Empowered, they said, like, when I read this, I just cried because I finally understood what I needed to do in product, because I'd been stressing him out so much. So, Umberto's denying it, but I think it was him. Who knows?
It resonated. It resonated. I'll give you that. Maybe 1 tier.
1 tier, just the sly one. But look, yeah, I guess, product leadership is it's a complex task, but there are a set of rules here, I think, to get good at this, and they are different to just thinking about it technically. If you can run the team technically, that's great, and make sure your team has urgency and getting shit done and releasing, like, that's all really good, and having those systems in place. But product leadership, I think, when I think about what makes a great products are built by great product teams. So you need to get really good at empowering and managing and inspiring a great product team. So you need to build it and then manage them to keep pushing forward towards a great product. And to build a great product team, I think you need to have 3 kind of fundamental pillars. And it sounds like I've prepared for this question, but I actually haven't. It's just that I did a presentation on this exact topic last night by chance. So the 3 pillars in my mind are strategy, talent, and systems. So strategy is the number 1 thing in my mind. So like you said, Umberto, you need to understand where your team's going. So you need to start with your company vision, and then your product strategy needs to fall out of that. And it doesn't just need to come out of your company vision and company mission, it also then needs to reshape it as well. It's like a loop where your product strategy shapes your company mission shapes your product strategy as you move forward. So you need to have a company strategy which understands, what is the world you're trying to build in the next 6, 12, 18 months, 2 years, whatever. And then where is that? Where do you play? What markets are you playing? And who are you serving? Who is your exact customer? What are you selling them? What's the value you're creating for them? You need to have North Star metrics. There's heaps of stuff out here on this. But I think one thing that you really need is that you need to boil down your whole strategy. I don't know if I've read this anywhere. I just do this and I think it's really important. You need to boil down your strategy into like 3 to 5 pillars, these are the 5 things that make our strategy. Everything we build fits under these 5 pillars of areas of focus for our company. And every single thing you build should be measured against that strategy and those pillars. And if you're constantly doing things that aren't on those pillars, you're either not using your strategy or your strategy is wrong. And you need to update your strategy, which is also totally fine. So build a very strong strategy. And that can change over time, but put the work in. And like you said, Umberto, the most important thing is to get buy-in. Get your other co-founders involved. Get your PMs involved too. They're probably pretty smart at this kind of stuff. But you need that strategy to lead. And then let that, fall into your roadmap. But once you have that strategy, I'd love to see if you had this problem too, Umberto. We've built a strategy tons of times and it just sat on a shelf. When you get the strategy, it's 1% of the work. It's hard, but it's 1%. You need to talk about it so much you want to vomit. You should just be so sick of it. So comms is so key in this, and that's what will make your PMs fall into line.
I think you need every single person in the company to have memorized it because you've told them so much about it, that when they think about what's coming next, they should understand what those pillars are and know whether it fits within those or not. And if it doesn't, then that's a different conversation, right? Is our strategy wrong, or is this something we shouldn't pursue?
Yeah. Well, I'm nervous that we might talk about this one for hours because I feel like there's so much to unpack here. But I think, to Tech and me, this is a really good problem to have. It feels like your product team is maturing. So you're in a good spot and you've identified that things need to change as well, and you need to get alignment, because alignment is really what you're seeking here. That's how you're actually going to push people forward in the right direction. So absolutely, just focus on a strategy as your number one thing. So pull people into line, build a strategy all together, make it clear, and everything you build should be against that strategy. And then say it so many times that people memorize it. Say it so many times that it's like a joke that you're saying it again, where people start making fun of you, just like, here we go, Umberto saying the strategy again. And then from there, there's so much else on the product leadership side of things. Build an analytics tool, measure your things, have success metrics. Like there's so much to unpack here, but start there and read those books that were all recommended. Well, we'll close that one out. That's the final judgment. Build a strategy, get buy into it, and just keep putting the work in. You've done something good so far, but this is just a starting point. Now you need alignment, you need clear strategy and expectations. So we'll close that one out. Tech and me, you have been advised. And we'll move on to the second question. This one is called Afraid to Launch My Product. So long story short, I've had a whole bunch of false starts in my life, from a dozen companies being started and abandoned, book deals getting to the cusp of getting signed and falling through, and great contract gigs being dangled and lost. I can't help but feel I've been a bit of a failure when it comes to my career endeavors. Over the last 2 months, I've been building an education product. I validated the product market fit with a smoke test. I built an MVP in Figma and hired developers who just finished their work this week. For all intents and purposes, I'm at the finish line with this thing. But I can't shake the feeling that I'm going to fail again. It's been all I can think about lately, and I'm not really sure how to shake it. Anyone been in this situation on Headspace before? From Baby Warhorse. That's the best name we've had. Baby Warhorse is such a sick name. That's a tough one, Umberto. What do you reckon?
Yeah. I think, first of all, everyone fails. Failure is natural. I think the really important thing is that from the failures you've had in the past, you've learned something. Like, you've spent the time to think about what went wrong and why, and hopefully you don't make the same mistakes again. It sounds like, they've done the work to try and validate the product. They've done some testing in the market. Potentially at this stage, it might help to have some early users ready to go. I don't know if that's the case or not. But if not, you've got your MVP product now. It's scary to release it, and most likely, you're not going to release it or push to production and suddenly get 100 users the next day. It's probably not going to go exactly the way you want it. But now you have a better asset than you had before with your landing page, with your Figma prototypes, with your smoke screen. You can use that to get into more conversations with prospects and hopefully learn more. And from that, iterate on your product and eventually get to a stage where you have your first paying customer, then your 10th, and so on. I think, you kind of need to set the fear aside and do it. Be prepared for it to not go exactly the way that you would dream it would go, and just keep working on it, because that's kind of the reality of it.
Oh, yeah. Man, startups are just a collection of failures that you just keep pushing through, and nothing goes to plan. But I'd say, Baby Warhorse, you're at the finish line right now. This is a huge milestone. You've had a dozen companies that you started and you dropped. You haven't dropped this one. You put the work in. You've got all the way. Launch it. That's huge. Most people will never start work on a business or an idea that they have, and then such a small fraction of them will ever get to the point where they can launch it. Who cares if it fails? That's just a huge milestone. I would say, unfortunately, whatever you built's probably wrong. And I know that sucks to hear, but every initial product's wrong. It's going to take 1,000 iterations before you get it awesome, before you get to that point of scaling and making money or making meaningful money and stuff like that. So you've got a great starting point here, but every stage is just going to be filled with mistakes that you're making and that you can learn from and change and iterate. So I just think you're in an awesome spot. I think what will separate you from this version of yourself to the version that you want to be, where you've got a business that's scaling or launching or whatever it is that your goals are, it's just persistence and resilience, and that sucks but startups are tough. I always say that startups are the best job in the world and the absolute worst job in the world. It's so painful. Umberto and I were talking about that before this, just about God. Well, I was like, how's it going? And Umberto and I were both just good. There was not a lot of energy in those sides. It's because, some days are good and some days are shitty, because, there's going to be a lot of mistakes and a lot of fails. But I think, you've gotten to an incredible position here. If I could just give you any advice, it's just that I think you need a co-founder. You need to be held. It sounds like maybe you're dropping out because it gets too hard at different points or things don't quite work out and go as smoothly as you want. Nothing holds me accountable like having co-founders, because I just don't want to let those guys down. And I think you'd be a super attractive co-founder for someone. You're at the finish line. You've got a product ready to go. You've got an idea that's to some extent validated. But launch it and keep going and just keep pushing forward. And if it doesn't go to plan, go again. But I think a co-founder could massively help you there. I don't know. I would have quit without my co-founders for sure.
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot of people that do this stuff solo. Amazing. I don't know how they do it. Being a startup is so many ups and downs, and just having other people alongside of you that maybe on a day where you're down, they're up, really helps propel you along. I have two co-founders with HowdyGo. One of us is always positive depending on the day, and that really, really helps you move forward.
One of you is always positive and one of you is always quitting. But look, I also think, Baby Warhorse, you're not alone. This feeling of it's not going to work out. That's just imposter syndrome. There are tomes and tomes of information out there about people going through this. you're making a new reality for yourself and for the world, and like your startup it's like a near impossible feat. And to feel like, it's not going to work out, or that like you're not smart enough to do it, or you're not the right co-founder or whatever, like that's all super normal. I've gone through like really bad bouts of imposter syndrome tons of times. I feel like for me, I kind of like go in stages where like I start out on a new role or a new like set of responsibilities in the company, and I feel like I'm not good enough at this. Like I've got no idea, and I feel like a huge imposter. Then I slowly like chip away, and I chip away and chip away, and I slowly get better and better at that set of responsibilities. And I finally get to the point where I'm like, I'm actually pretty fucking good at this. And then all of a sudden, I just get launched into a whole new set of responsibilities, a whole new side of scale, and I'm like, oh no, I'm back at the bottom, and I feel like an imposter again. Like, why am I getting to do all of this? And so I think it's just a cycle you go through as you get new skills and new responsibilities. But yeah, I think, get a co-founder, back yourself, and become an adult warhorse instead of a baby warhorse. And anything else you want to add there, Umberto, before I close this one out?
No, I think that's good advice.
Awesome. All right, baby warhorse, you have been advised. And now we'll move on. All right. Next question. This one is called Co-founders won't give product build timeline. Is this normal? I'm not the technical co-founder. My tech co-founder is doing the build and is saying it's not possible to estimate how long it takes to build our software product. And this is just the norm because there are so many unknowns. Is this normal? We've discussed all of the features in detail. I'm having a hard time understanding why any reasonable, accurate release date can't be estimated. It's making talks with future users and investors very difficult. And this is from Rigid Inclusions.
Yeah. Estimating things in the tech world is hard, but it doesn't. There's some level of guidance that you should be able to have. I think potentially what might be happening here is you've created a very well-defined scope for a piece of functionality. And then as the engineering team is building it out, maybe they said, okay, this might take, this is a one sprint, 2 weeks. And then they get a week into it and they're like, oh, actually, now that we've started building it and are learning more about the problem, this is actually a much bigger issue than we thought, and it's going to take twice as long. And that can easily spiral out of control when you have a very, very defined feature to build. I think what can help is when you're thinking, okay, this is our goal, this is what we're trying to build, is have a bit of flexibility on the scope of things. So you can change the scope as you find complexity gets out of control. In general, I think it might help stick to timelines if you have a bit more flexibility around what you're willing to build, and maybe cut features, cut functionality so that you get some of the value out. And I think at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, is trying to ship some value as quickly as possible so you can learn from it. Because if you spend what sounds like a very long time building something and then launch it after that very long time and get your first feedback then, you're probably going to have a pretty nasty surprise if it doesn't work out.
Yeah, and it won't. Not how you think.
Yeah.
I must sound like such a dickhead on this podcast, like, because I'm always just telling people like the first product's going to be shit, and it's just like, that's just the reality. Like it's going to need to change. It's probably got good foundations, but like all the things that you thought it was going to be, it's going to be a little bit different to that. So like the first version is going to need change for sure. But yeah, look, Rigid Inclusions, I feel ya, man. This is what we were like at the beginning. Our tech co-founder was just like, I have no idea how long stuff's going to take. It could be a day, it could be a year. And we were like, what the fuck? Like, that's surely not true. And I think, from a purely tech perspective, it can be like that. And for us, it was because our tech co-founder is like completely self-taught. He's like this wizard. Like it's actually made it hard to hire other engineers because he's so good at what he does. He can just build anything. He can do the design, he can do the back end, the front end. Like it doesn't make any sense. But before coming to us, he had never really built platforms from scratch before. So I think this is a pretty regular thing to go through, but them just saying it's impossible to estimate is actually false. What that's saying is that that's not a truism in product. That might be true for your technical co-founder, that they might not be able to estimate it because they aren't, experienced enough in this space. Because it is hard to estimate product, but it's not impossible. And you can give ranges, and there's that, everyone has probably seen this Venn diagram where like when you want to build something, there's cost, quality, and time. And, like you can control 2 out of the 3, So like if you just want to make sure time is the one thing that doesn't move, then your scope will shift. What you can actually have will shift. But if you need to have something out and to users by 2 months time, then that's the thing that's true, and everything else will go there, and you can just keep cutting and cutting and cutting from your functionality. But for a long time we were terrible at estimation, and we would do releases every 6 months sometimes, like, which is awful. And at the beginning we thought it might take us 2 weeks, and that's just because we would want this thing, it would just blow out and blow out and blow out. And I think the real thing that stops anything being able to estimate well is scope creep. Even when you have something well scoped out at the beginning, things come up. Don't let them come up. Cut them out. Okay, well, we just can't have a date picker then, or whatever the functionality is as you go. So, but now when we estimate, we're like pretty accurate. It's not perfect, but we know that we can build on a timeline, that if we think we need something done in 6 months' time, we know definitely we can get that done in 6 months' time. And the things that we do differently that make that really possible is the first of all is that we just build really small. So I think we used to build too much at once, and that's really easy to do at the beginning. But you don't need to build your whole product at once. Just stack on top of it, build the smallest possible version, and then just stack and stack and stack and stack and stack and iterate and do tiny tests, and if it works, build more and more. So when you build small, it's very easy to estimate small. It's very hard to estimate big, because when you build small, there's less hidden complexity. When you build large, there's massive hidden complexity. So just build tiny things, break your product down into like 1,000 things, and what's the very first iteration of it that you want to get out into the world, and then add to it, and then you can shape your product a whole lot better in the meantime. And then the second is that we just always hold time constant, like if we know we need to get this out because we're doing a release, like a big launch, like that's the thing. It's like, okay, well, that's what we know needs to get done, and we'll just cut shit out as we go. We do shittier versions of stuff sometimes because we just want to test it, or we cut things out of the test as well. But I don't think it's true to just say that you can't estimate. Like, you can't be exact, that's for sure, because it is complex. But if you hold time constant and you build in just tiny iterations every time, and you're releasing regularly, then it's a whole lot easier. It's a whole lot easier to have some clarity on when shit will get done.
I think it can also happen sometimes in a startup that your tech team might be overwhelmed with the work that they're trying to output. And so they're writing a lot of code, shipping, hopefully, a lot of code. And when they get thrown and passed the feature request and asked to scope out how long it takes, they might not prioritize the time that it takes to actually think through how to build that thing. So it might help to also make some time for planning ahead on your engineering side, which
that's such a good point. It's so easy as a founder to overwhelm your other technical co-founder. Like, we did that nonstop because we were just like, we need this now, and this is the most important thing, and now no, and we also need this, and it's all the top priority. And so like, there's also a good chance that you're causing this issue by just throwing too much at them. And like, it actually is impossible to estimate timelines if you keep changing the goalposts. If you keep adding feature requests or changing importance or changing what a feature needs to look like, then that is impossible. But if you, like you're saying about it, like if you can strip back and put the time in for future planning, like very clear future planning. I think that makes it a whole lot easier. So like put the time into future plan and strip down what you have. You know, do a more simple version of it. Even if it's like, you know, we need to do a full launch in 6 months. Do like a pseudo launch in 6 weeks, which is like a much stripped down version. And so you have something and it's working. And then add the date picker, and then add the video integration, or, you know, then add the whiteboard integration, whatever the other stuff is. All right, well, let's close this one out. Is it normal to have no timelines, or for it to be impossible to have no timelines? It's no. That is I guess like a result of circumstance, and the challenges is that likely if you're very early in the piece and it's your first startup, you're both just very inexperienced, then you're probably throwing too many features at this and you're wanting something way too big, and your tech co-founder's probably inexperienced and they've never, you know, had to estimate or build from scratch, and there's just too much complexity in there. So the steps are: strip back massively what you actually want to build smaller and more iteratively, and then put the time into plan. And that's it. Rigid inclusions, you've been advised. That's it. Take our advice and your business will be fixed. All right. And that's it. That's all the questions we have time for today. So we'll move on to the very last section of the show. I always tell people, Umberto, that this is the audience's favorite part of the show. And I have no data for that, but, you know, I just think it is. So we're moving on, and this is plugs. You know, so Umberto, what's going on right now? What do you want to plug?
Sure. I mean, if you're a startup founder in London and want to chat startups, product or marketing, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to help. And if you're looking at how to demo your product and how to show prospects how it works, and then check out HowdyGo as well. Yeah.
Great. And I'll put those links in the show notes. And then on my side, don't forget to like and subscribe. Get out your phone right now. Go to YouTube, hit subscribe. Go to Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Hit star. I don't know what it is. Download, whatever the buttons are on there. And then get out your friend's phone, your family's phone. Steal a phone. Do it on those phones as well. So get as many phones as you can. Send us photos. We'd love that. Thank you to everyone who writes in. We love your problems and questions. If you have any questions that you want us to answer, send them through to podcast@joelditrapani.com. And if you want to chat to me, you know, I love talking about product. I absolutely love this kind of shit. So book some time with me. I've got a calendar link in the show notes as well. So I'd love to get on a call and see what you're going through and see what challenges you have too. And we might talk about those on the podcast too. That's it. We're going to wrap this one up. Umberto, thank you, man. Thank you so much for coming on and arguing and laughing with me today. This has been a super fun conversation.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
This has been another episode of the Do As I Say, Not As I Do podcast. We'll see you all next week.